This is not rhetorical, I'm being so serious. If the price of everything keeps going up, and our salaries keep staying the same, what's gonna happen?
We're actually getting incredibly close to that point. We are expeditiously close to the point where we will see the rate of change of inflation supersede the average growth in wages. Now, the jobs report and the jobs report numbers, including unemployment, usually come out on the first Friday of the month. But one of the, I think, more overlooked things about jobs report numbers is the fact that we measure and report on how much wages are increasing. And if we look at the report that was released on Friday from April of 2026, we find that average real weekly earnings for US employees rose by about 3.6% year over year, which in a vacuum sounds great, right? Our wages are generally increasing, except it's very important, as this creator mentions, to look at that in the context of how much inflation has been increasing. Now, we actually have two metrics in economics about how we choose to measure inflation. We can use either the CPI or the PCE. Each of those measure different things, and they're good for different things that I'm happy to talk about in another video. But if we look at those two inflation metrics, what we find is that for the CPI, that has been increasing by about 3.3% year over year. And the PCE was found in March of 2026 to increase by about 3.5% year over year. As you can see, 3.6%, the amount that our wages have been increasing year over year, and 3.3 to 3.5%, which is how much inflation has been increasing year over year, is getting very close to that crossover point. And when that crossover point happens, there are a lot of concerns that economists have, both in the short run as well as in the long run. Now, in the immediate short run, what happens when inflation is superseding wage growth? It means that consumers have reduced purchasing power, right? They are not able to maintain the cost of living that they once did if the prices of the goods they used to be able to afford are becoming more and more out of reach because their wages aren't keeping up. This can lead to something known as the wage price spiral, which we worry about in economics. Essentially, what it means is that consumers, seeing decreases to their purchasing power, demand higher wages in order to keep up with those costs, which then lead companies to then increase prices further, which can exacerbate inflation if not kept under control. Another thing we worry about when this happens is increasing consumer debt, right? People taking money out of their savings in order to maintain the same living standards that they did before inflation superseded wage growth. As I've talked about in other videos, we are already seeing signs that this is happening with people having rising credit card debt. In fact, the amount of credit card debt defaults that we've seen in the last year is reaching the same level that it did in 2008. Now, I've said this before, but inflation in and of itself, if it is controlled, is not inherently a bad thing if wages are able to keep up with it. The major concern we have as economists is what we are potentially seeing in the next several months, where there is a decline in the purchasing power of consumers, which would negatively affect economic growth. Unfortunately, until we are able to have a government or an administration that is able to acknowledge that this is a problem and is taking steps to address it, we are kind of in this position where we have to wait and see what ends up happening here. That is my suggestion as an economist. As my suggestion as a human being, I would take efforts to invest in your community, to invest in yourselves, to reach out and ask for help. I can only hope that videos like this help raise awareness about the economic reality we are living, as well as influence you to take steps to urge your people in government to do something, because they ultimately have the power to influence economic policy one way or the other. And for now, that's all I got. As always, if you have any questions, let me know.